Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our online event this evening. My name is Antonia Beck, and I'm one of the directors of Brumiodo. And on behalf of Brumiodo, I'm really delighted to welcome you and that we're presenting this event this evening, where we'll be discussing how public and outdoor art can help us commemorate and memorialise key moments in our lives, such as loss, connect grieving communities, and support us to have better conversations about death. Before I introduce our speakers this evening, I just wanted to go through a few housekeeping notes and give an overview of Brumiodo's work for those of you who aren't familiar with us. So this is a relaxed event. Please feel free to turn off your video if that's more comfortable for you, but of course it's always nice to see everyone's faces as well. Everyone apart from our speakers will be muted to prevent any background noise, and please keep your mute on during the event unless requested to unmute by our chair or one of our co-hosts. You can select speaker view on the top right hand corner to ensure you see the people who are speaking, and you may want to switch to gallery view later on when we open up the discussion. We'd encourage you to use the chat function to take part in this conversation and to ask questions. And if you're tweeting about the event, you can use hashtags I remember and life death Brum. And just to flag up, this event is being recorded. So just a little bit about Brumiodo. Brumiodo is based in Birmingham and was founded in 2015. Brumiodo was set up with the aim of supporting our communities to have more open and honest conversations about death and dying. We are part of a national and international social movement which believes that everyone is entitled to a good death. Over the last 5 years, we have delivered a varied programme of events, which includes creative workshops, community arts projects, festivals and conferences, working with diverse communities and arts and non-arts partners across Birmingham and the West Midlands to explore new ways in which we can connect and talk more openly about death and dying. This also includes our annual award-winning Arts and Cultural Festival, A Matter of Life and Death, which takes place in spaces across Birmingham in May to coincide with Dying Matters Awareness Week. You can find out more about Brumiodo via our website, which is brumiodo.org.uk, and you can also follow us on social media. So this evening, I am delighted to introduce our speakers, Luke Jerram, Mohammed Ali, and Orit Azaz. Luke is a multidisciplinary artist whose practice involves the creation of sculptures, installations, and live arts projects. Living in the UK, but working internationally since 1997, Luke has created a number of extraordinary art projects, which have excited and inspired people around the world. He is known globally for his innovative arts practice and large-scale public artworks, which are part of permanent collections in the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York and the Wellcome Collection in London, as well as touring around the world. Luke's most recent artwork, In Memoriam, which is currently touring the UK, is a temporary memorial for the public to visit and remember all those we have lost from the COVID-19 pandemic. Art meets faith, identity, and social change in Mohammed Ali's work, adorning the canvas of walls and public spaces and continuing to change the visual landscapes of the cities we live in. Mohammed is a pioneer in the street art movement, initially fusing street art with Islamic scripture and patterns, delivering powerful and moving messages that speak to all. His art has inspired and informed a new generation across the globe to boldly express their identity and ideals. Mohammed's ethos of taking art to the people has evolved to combine street art with live performances, installations, digital projections, and moving soundscapes. He has created art for live audiences throughout the world in cities such as New York, Kuala Lumpur, Cape Town, and Melbourne. In 2008, Mohammed established the organisation Soul City Arts. He is also an educator and curator and often works in the heritage sector. He is a trustee at the Birmingham Museum and Art Gallery, an associate artist at the Birmingham Rep Theatre, and was awarded an MBE in 2016 for his service to art and community cohesion. And our chair this evening, Orit Azaz. Orit is an independent artistic director, facilitator, and creative thinker with a national and international profile for working in cultural and community settings. Orit's experience combines directing large-scale performances and events, developing context for collaborations between artists and communities, and art form development and research. Over the last 6 years, the focus of Orit's work has been outdoor arts, working with the UK's leading contemporary circus theatre company, No Fit State Circus, as artistic director of a series of large-scale open-air performances, including Park Life, Barricade and Open House. In parallel, Orit has supported the development of outdoor arts both nationally and in Birmingham and the West Midlands, working with the Birmingham Hippodrome, Midlands Arts Centre and Creative Shift to help create the conditions for more high-quality outdoor arts in the region. So a huge welcome to our speakers this evening and to our attendees. Thank you for joining us, and I'll now hand over to Orit.
Thank you. Thanks, Antonia, and welcome to everybody. Thank you very much for being here for what promises to be an amazingly interesting, rich, deep conversation. So just to briefly introduce myself with my voice, thank you, Antonia, you did a better job than I could have done. I think what I wanted to say to you is that I am passionate about devising ways to bring people together who wouldn't normally meet, to share new experiences and conversations. And I've chosen to work in outdoor and public spaces wherever possible over the last, in fact, 11 years now. And that's because I really relish the opportunity to change the rules of social engagement, even if it's just for a few moments. And so I'm really delighted to be privileged, humbled to be part of the conversation this evening, which I understand to include the question, how can we create large-scale artistic work that engages people in a public space in themes relating to death, grief, remembrance? In a moment, I'm going to invite Luke and Mohammed to introduce themselves and their artistic practice and to speak briefly about their responses to this theme of collective remembrance and bringing people together to grieve together. I'll then ask them a couple of questions, and then I'm going to open up for a conversation and responses to your questions. We really want your input. We want your voice, as it were, to be present in this conversation. So if you haven't already, please can you introduce yourself in the chat. If you are not knowing what I mean by the chat, it goes like this. On the bottom of your screen, there are some icons, and there's one which is a speech bubble, and underneath it says the word chat. So if you haven't clicked on that, click on it now, and hopefully you'll see what other people have introduced themselves already. Please do type a few words in there. And please feel free to write comments or reflections or questions in that chat as we go along. And if you are someone who has an answer to one of those questions or want to respond yourself, please feel free to do that. We'll try, obviously it gives us then a conversation that we can capture and save afterwards. We'll also try to capture the questions and respond to as many as possible. We'll also ask you to raise your graphic hand, which you can do at the bottom, where it's there's a kind of funny smiley face at the bottom of your screen, and it says the word reactions. And I think you can put your hand up there. Let me just double check. Oh no, it's got oh yeah, it's got clapping and thumbs up on mine. In which case you can, if you click on participants and find yourself, then there'll be an option to raise your hand there, or you can just wave frantically or write in the chat, I want to speak now. So please be active and be present in this conversation. We've asked Mohammed and Luke to just prepare a few words by way of introduction to themselves, their artistic practice, and their recent and previous responses to the theme of collective remembrance. So first of all, I'm really delighted to welcome Mohammed and I'm handing over to you, Mohammed, now.
Right. Hi guys. Hi everyone. Thank you, Orit. First of all, I just want to begin by saying, when we talk about death, I feel really alive. Okay, it's brilliant, really. This theme. I'm excited to be here to just talk about something so what's the word? Just unusual and just something a little bit different. Death. I always say that death is the biggest taboo in life. It's something that we don't talk enough about. So it really resonates with me, this topic. And death is actually embedded in my work. It's kind of, I'm probably reminded about death 5 times a day. As someone who was born a Muslim, although more in my adult years, I started to kind of turn to faith and my faith as a Muslim for answers, and started to, you know, become more mindful and a bit more practicing of my own faith. So 5 times a day when I pray, I'm on my prayer mat and I'm thinking about death, and I'm thinking about my purpose in life. You can't help but not kind of almost have death as kind of a reality that faces you throughout the day. And for me, that's what kind of kept me grounded. It's kept me in check. It's helped me realign to my goals. And, you know, it's kind of gave me a bit of a jolt, and quite literally through a few health scares that I've had in my life and the losses in my life as well. My late father passing, which I'll talk about a bit later. So that's how important for me in my life, my daily life, as well as my artistic practice. Death just seems to be consistently kind of running through the work that I do. I think it's important to highlight the part I mentioned about me being Muslim, because there's something really important, and why death for me as an artist of Muslim background and of Muslim faith, how death is almost inevitably and almost it's expected to be kind of deeply kind of woven into my work. Why? Because as a Muslim, and I'm not going to get into preacher mode here because I don't do preaching, right? But what I do like to do is shed a little bit of light sometimes on perhaps in particular in Britain, I'm born and raised here, a faith community that perhaps is so misunderstood and misrepresented. So often I do find myself kind of going, this is who we are and what we do. But the reality is, you know, there are many statements about, you know, and how as a Muslim, I've been reminded throughout my life, you know, sayings of the Prophet Muhammad, which is every soul shall taste death. You know, there's times where I've said, I haven't got yet to do this, but I felt like that needs to be painted on a wall, and as dark, as grim as it might be, I feel like those words are so powerful that every soul shall taste death, as a reminder for people to stop in their tracks and say, what is going on? As Muslims, I'm encouraged by the Prophet in his teachings to visit graveyards regularly, remind yourself about death. So this is how ingrained it is within me, and as I said, it comes through in the work that I do. So on that note, I'm going to share some visuals with you. So just bear with me for a second. Start. Okay. You should be seeing my screen. Orit, could you give me a thumbs up that you see these images? Yes, great, thank you. So, as I mentioned, this is a mural you can see here, painted in the Bronx in New York. And this was probably the beginning, this was probably the beginning of my journey, talking about 15 years ago or so, where I went over to the Bronx in New York, and it was described by the New York Times, this mural, as the most sacred street art in New York City, because this family, you can see the family who I'm standing with here, 10 children died in this apartment block fire. And I'd heard about that, and I was passing through New York, and I went over and I painted a kind of a mural tribute for this family. And it was it changed everything for me, because I saw the power of putting something in a public space. I mean, I've been a graffiti artist for decades, right? But this for me really was, it just helped me really capture this, understand the spirit of how putting a bit of paint on a brick wall can, you know, and the healing properties of it, and quite literal. You see me standing with a mother who only months previously had lost all of her children. And here she was spraying a spray can onto a brick wall in the Bronx. And it was kind of a big kind of a wake-up call of the power of art and its healing properties. Beyond
Mohammed,
that,
can you make it full screen?
Oh, it's not full screen? It should be full screen now.
On mine, it's not full screen. I can see next slide and the other images. So I don't know if there's anything. It doesn't matter. It's not a big deal.
Okay. Do you see that full screen with white space top and bottom, or no?
I see the image you're talking to, and then I see the next slide as well next to it.
What's happening? Hang on. Let me swap the displays around. How about that now? Is that better?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
I thought there was one right. Okay, here we go. So there we had, yeah. So that was the mural I just spoke about. Jumping onto this now. This was at the Birmingham Rep Theatre. You could probably see me in the middle of that wall standing on a ladder. I'll zoom in just to help you out there. You can just see me standing there, just to give you an idea of what that wall was, what the scale of the wall was. And what you'll notice on the right-hand side of that huge mural was you'll see a baby within the womb. And this mural, only months after the passing of my father, which changed a lot for me, and it really became embedded within my work, this constant kind of, for me, as I said, a reminder of life and death. And months after the passing of my father, my first son was born. So you could, that baby in the womb was kind of really captured, you know, the scan of my first son. And you can see faintly, you'll see here, let me zoom in. So there's the baby in the womb on the right hand side, and just top left in some orange script, you can see the words in Arabic, Inna lillahi wa inna ilahi raji'un, which translates as, verily from God we came and to him we shall return. And it's a verse or a statement that's said perhaps every other day. Whenever you hear of someone who's passed in the community, these words just instinctively, you're kind of commanded to just remind people around you, we came from there and we are going to return one day. And this is what I put on the wall as a kind of a bit of a tribute for my father. And this was this performance event that took place at the Rep Theatre. But what was also beautiful, all of this beautiful art and projections that was performed in front of 500 people, then eventually was reduced to a pile of rubble, as you can see here. You probably recognize the spot, in fact, where the Rep and the library complex now stands. And actually, a lot of people said to me, how do you feel about that? For me, it's beautiful. The destruction of that, there was a beauty within it. And it was almost a reminder and a metaphor for the very thing I was painting, which was, you know, everything is just passing for us. You know, things come and go and we don't attach ourselves too much to life. I'm probably mostly known for the Mohammed Ali stencils, because my namesake, of course, I was very passionate about preserving the memory and memorializing this great individual, this great figure in inner city neighborhoods across Birmingham and other cities like Johannesburg, London, and Manchester, where I started to travel and take not just the image of Muhammad Ali, but just pretty much just kind of remind people of the words of this man. And it was literally the next day after his passing. There was something quite powerful about having his words on the wall. For me, the saying, we all know the saying, if only walls could speak. Well, you know what? They can speak. Who said they can't speak? Because that's what I was doing. I was putting the words, some profound words that are great reminders for communities, especially after days of his passing, and placing statements like this that would hopefully stop us in our tracks, that would hopefully become a little bit like a bit of a glitch, if you like, in the visual landscape, where you would stop and ponder and reflect. I always often describe that these kind of appearances of these murals and stencils that we would put in the streets, I always say that it's almost like an alien ship and a horn is blown, like a kind of a statement of this art that just has appeared overnight. And it wasn't just a bit of eye candy that has come and emerged from the subways of New York, or the hipster streets of Shoreditch, or the painted streets of Digbeth in Birmingham. But this was something a little bit different. These were words that reminded us about death. You know, in the chaos of the world that we live, where we are bombarded with the visual landscape of billboards and, you know, all of this stuff in the landscape that kind of distracts us, to suddenly see these words of wisdom, profound words that remind us a calling to something else. And as I said, something that perhaps society likes to push to the back of our minds. I've always asked the question, why is it that there's documentaries about everything under the sun from the animal kingdom? I used to sit with my father and we'd watch these shows, but never would I get that. And where would I get that knowledge about death and what happens when I'm 6 foot under, in a very real sense? And I'm not talking about the church or the mosque sermon that kind of puts it in this very kind of abstract or fluffy spiritual kind of speak. I'm talking about reality, about where am I going to be if I was to be, you know, 6 foot under the ground? What happens to my body and my soul? So commemorating these words, these moments in time, and George Floyd was another of those moments that I felt that I needed to place that as a stark reminder and a wake up for people. And when this piece was painted off by Birmingham City Council, horrifyingly, yes, I know, they painted it off. The response was, of course, to project it 100 times bigger on a building, and that can be seen here. you know, as the city council tried to paint something off, our response was to not just project it 100 times bigger, but actually to put it on a building that everyone coming into Birmingham on the Moore Street station, this is the building, this is the image that they would be greeted with. So, you know, the kind of, there's a statement in placing some of these things in places that perhaps, you know, one would not expect. To end on this point, my obsession with capturing narratives around death became so much that when I was doing live art performances, and you can see me on stage, this was in, where was that, Australia, on stage in front of 1,000-odd people, I was even dressing up as the angel of death almost, right? You can see me paint. I mean, it also helps because the spray kind of doesn't get on my clothes, so wearing a long black cloak also was great protective clothing. But as you can see, this is another show I did in Malaysia where I put an actor inside of a glass box, and he had this whole narrative about death and about about waking up inside of a glass box, almost as if he's being buried alive. And that's quite literally what you see, what I do, where I come over to this glass box on stage while he's reciting his monologue piece. I come and spray the glass box until he can no longer be seen. I know it sounds quite terrifying, but you kind of got to see it because it does have a bit of light at the end as well. It isn't so grim. So thank you for, I mean, I hope that's been on point for you guys and relevant to the theme. Orit, I want to pass it straight back to you.
Oh, thank you. And thanks so much, Mohammed. It's always provocative, moving, powerful to listen to you speak about your work and also about the relationship between your life, your faith, your identity, your city and your work. So thank you very much. I've got lots of questions to ask you, and I'm sure other people have too, but what we agreed is that we're going to hand over to Luke to introduce. Can you introduce now yourself, your practice, and your responses to this theme, and then after that I'll throw some questions at Mohammed.
Yeah, so my name's Luke Jerram. I'm living in Bristol. I'm actually in a holiday home at the moment, down in Westwood Ho, of all places. So yeah, my practice, I often work outdoors, fusing arts with science rather a lot. Could you, yeah, let's run through some slides. Could you have the first slide up? Or the second one? Yeah, so yeah, what about the one of the street piano? So the next one. There we go. So yeah, I'm sort of known for putting art in the public domain, for initially putting pianos in streets for people to play. They act as a blank canvas for the public's creativity. They're very much about, there's a sense of optimism, there's a sense of potential. And I like to think that actually we're here for a short amount of time, and my job as an artist is to try to sort of point society in the right direction. So, you know, the streets are for us to animate. The cities belong to us whilst we're here. We're here, you know, 70 years, whatever, and the city is up to us to sort of shape it before we then hand it on to the next generation. So a lot of these artworks are sort of, yeah, I like to think that they help change society. I've installed about 2,000 street pianos now in about 70 cities around the world, and now you see them everywhere in train stations and airports all around the world. So in that way they've become part of culture, and I'm quite proud about that. And they act as a blank canvas for everyone else's creativity, and I think that's a theme running right through my artworks. Do you want to have the next slide? There we go. So yes, this is a Museum of the Moon. It's a replica moon, and it's an installation artwork that's been touring for a couple of years now. And it's both a surround sound sort of installation artwork that goes into cathedrals and swimming pools and science museums and light festivals, both indoors and outside. But also it acts as a venue for events to take place beneath it. So we've had lectures, astronomy lectures, and people doing yoga under the moon, and opera and film nights, and a whole range of different kind of crazy activities. Do you have the next slide? And the next one. But so there is something about leaving space for other people to be creative that's quite important for me, and more and more I'm thinking, you know, as I get a slightly older, I'm thinking, what's actually worth doing? You know, let's say I've got another 20-30 years left. What can I do that can actually have a positive impact on society? So the street piano project, that's led to people getting married, where they've met each other, fallen in love and got married as a consequence. We've had homeless people who've been given recording contracts and jobs. It's led to all sorts of interesting changes and outcomes and positive stuff in society. So more and more I'm thinking, well, what can we actually do that can have a real impact on society in a positive way? What do people need? You know, the moon and the earth, these artworks that are touring, they act as a sort of mirror to what people bring to them. So if you're an astronomer, you look at the moon. I've had a space scientist in tears where he needed a hug. He's studied the moon for 20 years on a computer, and then he sees it in the room there, this giant replica moon, and he gets all sort of emotional. And then there was a little girl who turned up and she said, will you put the moon back afterwards? So she thought I'd stolen the real moon. And I had to sort of reassure her, yep, I'm definitely going to put the moon back afterwards. So let's have the next slide. Oh yeah, this is interesting. This is about grief as well. In this domed artwork that people can visit, in the top there's a bell, and it's an extinction bell, and it rings between 150 and 200 times a day, which is the number of extinctions there are of species around the world. Should we have the next slide? And this was commissioned by Sky Arts. But it's a very joyous and beautiful artwork. And I often do that a lot with my artwork. There's a tension between the beauty of these things, and then there's a sort of tension in what they represent. So there's a sort of darker underbelly. Let's have the next slide. And it was during the lockdown that everyone's life was turned upside down, and I realized that we've become blind, really, and certainly during the lockdown, really welcoming of the open and green spaces. And I wanted to create an artwork as a tribute to all the NHS workers, and again as a sort of mirror to what people can bring to it. So this is an installation. Let's play the film and you'll see what it is. Thanks.
My name is Luke Jerram and I'm the artist behind In Memoriam. It is an installation of about 40 metres across. It consists of 120 flags, all made of NHS bedsheets, and they create this large array, an installation for people to explore and contemplate. During the pandemic, we've needed these horizons, especially during lockdown, these empty spaces. We feel safe, comforted. There's a sense of the future in front of us. I suppose this artwork provides that opportunity to contemplate.
In Memoriam gives us an opportunity to come together in a really safe space, outdoors in the fresh air, and to think about our shared humanity.
Many funerals have been limited, cathedrals and churches have been closed, and it just felt like we needed a space, a sort of temporary memorial artwork, a safe place for us to go to contemplate what's happened as a consequence of this pandemic. There's been, over 40,000 deaths so far, and a lot of people are grieving and trying to digest what's happened, and so that's the reason I made this artwork.
We're in a time where we don't quite know what's going to happen, and we look out at the sea. Behind the artwork, this great unknown that offers fear but also offers some level of comfort.
It feels like really kind of like quiet, like not in that there's not many people down here, because there is, but it feels
like everyone's having a think, rather than just sort of wandering around aimlessly.
I guess it makes you think about it when you understand what it's for. It makes you reflect, I think. It does make you feel more emotional and reflect on the not so good things about this year.
I mean, it's quite nice to remember them and have something done.
I think it's nice that people respect the other people that died with COVID.
You can hear the wind flapping through the flags. Very much sense the power of nature. You very much sense a strength of emotion, quite meditative as well actually, and quite comforting. It's a real polarity between a kind of visceral fear and a ability to stand with it.
It is something that, really does, pull it together, what people have suffered over the last 3 or 4 months.
I don't think we were prepared for what we experienced earlier in the year. So, on a personal level, it's a lovely peace that's come over the area, which is definitely what we need.
It's been really lovely watching children just running around between the flags, completely oblivious to its meaning, whereas the artwork for some people who perhaps work for the NHS, who've lost colleagues, this artwork is quite an emotional experience for them. It just acts as a safe space for people to think about what we've been through over the last 6 months.
It reminded me when I was in Nepal, there were prayer flags and people would have the flags out with the idea the wind would take the prayers up, and I don't know, it felt like that to me, that it was really kind of taking what the artist was trying to get across, that feeling, and it was blowing it out and making it very real.
I'm really proud that we've commissioned this artwork. In Memoriam can encapsulate and communicate some of the things that my NHS colleagues have been going through. Lives have been lost and moments of reflection have been few and far between. This artwork really will help people heal.
Public artwork that's free for everyone to enjoy is vital at a time like this.
Yeah, there we go. I'm happy to leave my presentation there for the time. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Luke. Did you want to say any other words or just pause there?
No, I'm happy to leave the presentation there. I realised I've run out of time anyway, and I think the film sort of says it all. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to ask you a quick question, Luke, and then I'm going to address a question to Mohammed. And everyone else, if you could give some thought to what questions you would like to ask, that'd be great. Luke, I guess you said that you're asking yourself what's worth doing now, next, and you made a choice to address this theme. I just wonder, what was your it's obvious to me what made you decide to address it, but I wonder what was your approach to arriving at this artwork, and also how has the process of creating this work around such a potentially uncomfortable theme, how has that affected you, would you say?
Yeah, it's interesting. The artwork was actually commissioned for presentation in January. I was asked to make an artwork for the NHS on Weston-super-Mare Beach. And I came up with this idea of using 120 bed sheets to create this array of flags in a kind of medical logo. And it was 120 because I'd read that in the British Medical Journal, there'd been 120,000 deaths caused by austerity over the last 10 years. So 10 years of Tory austerity basically has led to 120,000 deaths. The exhibition was then cancelled because of the pandemic. And then I thought, actually, the artwork is worth, it can still work conceptually if it's then about the pandemic, and that there's something about its use and it just seemed to have a value, I think, from the public's perspective. I thought it was worth pushing forward and making happen. And again, it acts as this venue for other people to animate. So we've had poetry readings and small choirs performing, and little ceremonies and things like that wherever it gets presented. So yeah, it evolved out of artworks are often like that. You start off in one area and then it becomes something else for some other reason, you know. But I think it was worth doing. I think in terms of the impact that it's had for the public, it seems to have had a value.
And how's that second part of my question there was, how's that affected you to be engaging with this theme? What difference will it make to you as you approach your next piece of work?
Yeah, it's made me very sort of sensitive, I suppose, to how close we are to death, I suppose. And also it's about responsibility. I think it feels like I have a responsibility as an artist to serve the public in some capacity, that these artworks can change people's lives. If you get it right, they're having a huge impact on for some people in their lives, and that's massive. So some people I think we've had about 10 million people who've seen the moon so far around the world. And some of those people, young kids, will be so switched on, they're going to go off and study astrophysics and stuff. Whereas this In Memoriam, it might be of real value for NHS workers or people who've just lost their parents, perhaps, or loved ones, to have that moment. I've had some lovely comments coming in via Twitter of people who felt really close to their loved ones when they come to see the artwork, which has been really touching.
Thank you. Thanks, Luke. So I'm going to turn the beam of my attention onto Mohammed for a moment. People will open up for questions for both of you in a moment. Mohammed and indeed Luke, thanks so much for your generous talking about your work and your practice. It's incredibly inspiring to hear you speak, and your values and approaches kind of resonate for me very much. I'm sure for everybody who's listening. Mohammed, you gave us some really specific examples of commemorating moments through your work, and I suppose I wonder, given the moment that we're in is this global pandemic, I wonder, what are your thoughts on how to commemorate that, how to remember the stories and experiences from this time? I wonder if you've embarked on any conversations with people and communities about that, or if you're thinking about how to approach it. Yeah, it'd be great if you could share your thoughts on that with us.
Sure. I'd say I am embarking, but more so on a strategic level. And I think one might say, you're an artist, you know, what are you talking about strategy? But I feel, you know, I enjoy kind of straddling kind of different worlds, where I'm a trustee of a museum. I'm an associate artist at Birmingham Theatre, but I paint, and I speak about art. I always often say to so many artists, in particular artists from the world that I come from, be it street artists or whatever, in particular street artists, about artists just learning to speak and engage, right? Let's use the example of street art in particular. Why is it an art form that is so often misunderstood? Only recently, through the work of Banksy, are we kind of fully exposed to the beauty of street art and the power of it. But I remember, you know, as recent as 15 years ago, I was still doing the same old tired discussions on radio about, is graffiti art or vandalism? So learning to speak, learning to engage strategically, learning to change, even what Luke just mentioned about the fact that there are physicists that will, as a result of seeing the moon, I want to kind of tangibly grasp some of these facts and present that, so that we can kind of overcome this whole, you know, keep having this art thing, which is out there in this kind of, you know, esoteric form that is for certain types of people only. Oh, it's not really my thing. That, well, it absolutely is. It's for everybody. When we talk about Arts Council's approach of art for everybody, or these slogans often we hear, what does that really mean? How do you really break it down? And we talk about making art accessible. So I kind of enjoy kind of kind of being in both of those worlds. And I'd say this moment we're in terms of COVID, which is absolutely for me, it's been an enough moment in many different ways. It's a massive wake-up call. It's a mirror reflection of ourselves to look at the mirror and say, where are we going? And are we now going to wake up to the reality of how fragile our existence is? You know, I know I sound like some kind of church or mosque preacher man here, but the reality is, having experienced loss in my own life, having experienced quite serious illness myself and overcome it, I'd say that I'm more passionate than ever. And COVID itself, I've been one of those vulnerable people who have had to kind of, you know, and vulnerable people in my family that I've had to kind of, you know, guard and be aware of. So I'd say I'm very keen to seize this moment strategically. Let's change the landscape as well as making the art. I just feel like the system of the art, and not by people over there, men in suits, men in grey suits, making decisions and policies about the arts and culture, but actually how the artists and the makers who are on street corners making the arts can be at that table, or should force their way onto that table, which is what I've been doing, saying, I'm absolutely going to be present. And I'll give you an actual example, hopefully to just inspire and give an example of where these changes can happen. The fact that Birmingham Museum has just appointed 2 people of color, right? I'm the only, by the way, I'm the only non-white trustee on the board of trustees at the moment, which is quite shocking for a city like Birmingham. However, what was now happened, we have 2 people of color who are now chief exec. It's a joint role. A female Pakistani lady and someone of Afro-Caribbean heritage from Bristol, who are now going to be running a city museum. And, you know, I'd say I've been quite engaged in that process and been part of that process.
Yep.
So yeah, I'd say strategy, changing the landscape, absolutely crucial. There's no point making what I always say are like fireworks. It's all nice having these beautiful, pretty fireworks that explode in the sky, but when it lands and the dust settles, what next? What now? I don't want to see a one-off set of fireworks for one night only. I want to see the whole landscape dismantled and changed so that it can be encompass everybody.
Yep. Thank you. Yeah, thanks for the strategic overview. And actually, I'd like to ask I'm going to ask you a question that was put in the chat by Jenny Woodley. Jenny, I hope you don't mind if I speak your question for you. So this is a question for you, Mohammed. And Jenny says, I wonder if you could speak a bit more about your creation of the mural in New York. You said that the bereaved mother took part in creating the mural. Do you think that creating art can play a role in the grieving process?
It was absolute evidence for me. There was tears being shed as the paint was being painted. That's how raw the emotion was, right? It was incredible. I saw it, I witnessed it. And, you know, it was quite something. But I'd also say, I mean, this is another discussion in itself about community engagement and how you meaningfully engage people in a way that goes beyond the usual community engagement programs that we see, which is sometimes can fall into, you know, tokenism and a little bit, you know, kind of lazy assumptions about what community wants and how they engage. And it's something that I talk a lot about how as an artist, I have to be a listener. How do I respect the people? It's all good me cutting and pasting some art into a public space, but I've fundamentally, I've asked serious questions, and there's been a point where I've stopped painting public art because I questioned my approach. Am I lazily just kind of imposing my art on people in a public space, or can I engage them, not just in the making of it, but also sometimes one might say, you know, you involve them in the process, but sometimes it can be, I always say to a street artist in particular, and I hope I won't offend any street artists here, I say, when you're making that piece of art on a street corner, take off those damn headphones, turn your back to the wall and engage with the people, right? Because you are painting in people's neighborhoods, especially when we're talking about neighborhoods and residential neighborhoods that might be perhaps inner city neighborhoods where you're kind of parachuting into people's lives. But at the very least, there's a kind of a whole process of respecting. And I still remember dealing with the mother in it was such a sensitive situation where, you know, people were like, we shouldn't really bother her. I've been in numerous situations where people said, we must respect their grieving time and their period. And I've actually found contrary, where I've just gone straight up to somebody and said, who's just experienced death, a loss, and they've embraced it. And I've kind of gone to the people, see what I mean? You just kind of got to stop pussyfooting around here. Sorry, that's...
Don't apologise for your passion on this team, Mohammed. Thank you. Thanks for that. Luke, that's but it's your cue to unmute. So I'm picking up on a point that Alison has written here. I love the way that both Luke and Mohammed's work allows both for collective and deeply personal responses to death and grief. Maybe we need more public opportunities for this way of memorializing people and bringing communities together. So Luke, I'm going to ask you what do you think about that, and what advice would you give to either someone looking to commission an artist to consider a way of memorializing and bringing people together, or an artist who was trying to engage with the themes that you just have?
Yeah, I think there seems to be a great demand for kind of plaques with names on and plinths and all that. And that's what people instantly think of, isn't it? As sort of names on little plaques on objects, so that, and I think it can be problematic, because then you've got conversations about who's on the plaque and who isn't on the plaque, and and in what order should they be, and who has their names, and all those sort of conversations. Really difficult, really complicated. I make a lot of temporary artworks that don't need planning permission, and artworks that only last sort of 28 days before they move on somewhere else. And it means that it's sort of less bureaucratic. You have to, with permanent artworks, you have to go through massive committees to be able to get an artwork made. Unless, of course, you're a graffiti artist or a street artist and doing it on the wall, perhaps without all those permissions. But again, even graffiti, it's a temporary, it's there for as long as the community want it, to a certain degree, isn't it? And I suppose my advice would be to start off by making temporary interventions and testing things out and seeing what impact it has, what value it has, before making it permanent. But even permanent isn't really permanent. There isn't really such a thing as permanent. I'm often seeing art sort of briefs, and it says it has to last 20 years. And I think a lot of public artwork then has to be sort of graffiti proof, weatherproof, vandal proof, and you would just end up with large lumps of concrete and metal and steel and things that can last that long, because it's deemed as being permanent. And that's not necessarily what we need for every artwork, to have something that's really heavy and dense. Maybe we need something that's lighter and more ephemeral. So just being open to opportunities and open to people's imaginations is really important. But leaving space for people's interpretation is really important as well.
Well, I think your work is especially generous in that respect, Luke. You as you said at the beginning when you showed us the picture of the slide down Park Street in Bristol, it doesn't exist until people are sliding down on it, and that's the same with the pianos and the moon. And here you've also created a kind of a space, a context for people to celebrate, to commemorate, to create their own responses to the work and the moment. And I think that's really powerful.
Yeah, they leave, a lot of these artworks, they leave space around it for people to have conversations with one another about what they're experiencing.
Yeah.
And that's quite important with some of these artworks, certainly with the moon. So they're looking at the moon, but they're also talking to one another about what they can see and what they think they're experiencing. And I think the In Memoriam, it does that as well. And it becomes complete. A lot of these artworks only become complete with the presence of the public. The public are a kind of integral visual part of the artwork almost.
Yes, thank you. There's a really important and interesting question from Ellie Shipman. I wonder if you want to ask that question yourself, Ellie. I'm going to give you a moment to unmute and speak, and then if you don't, I'll ask it for you.
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Luke and Mohammed, for your talks. It's really lovely to hear your approaches to grief. So my question was, I'm a participatory artist as well, and I worked on a project which was for the University of Bristol around working with women who've experienced displacement from Iraqi Kurdistan and Syria. And I was wondering your approach on how you protect yourself and your own well-being when working with grieving communities, because especially as a freelance artist, you don't have an organisation or anything to kind of support you. And going in to talk to those communities, it's often, you know, you don't know what you're going to hear from people or how much they're going to share. And part of my practice is trying to create an incredibly safe space for people to share anything they feel like. But as a very empathetic person, I often take that on myself. So yeah, I'd welcome both your thoughts on that. Thank you.
Want to take that, Mohammed?
Mohammed, you're mute. Yep, I can hear you now.
I can take it, but let me think. I don't know what advice I can give, really. It's a tricky one.
I could take it if you want.
Yeah, go on then. Yeah, please.
Give him some time to think.
Yeah, no, I purposely protect myself, I suppose. I'm living in a nice part of Bristol, and Bristol's a nice city in England, and England is a safe place to be in the world, relatively. And so, you know, I try to protect myself mentally, and have a sort of force field around me, but then I'm then allowed to go and make myself vulnerable in a small amount of time. You know, like I did some work in Bosnia during the war there, and you know, you're seeing sort of absolute devastation of war and death. I was working with teenagers who'd spent 10 years hiding in cellars, pretty much, and the whole city was covered in bullet holes, and it was a complete mess. And I was very, very shaken by the entire journey there. But I was able to come back to Bristol, you know, to a safe place. And I think, it's being able to sort of compartmentalize it is really important. And I've been very fortunate in my life in that I haven't had much trauma. And so it almost gives me a responsibility to sort of try to, you know, I have a strength that allows me to then go and make myself vulnerable to help other people, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, thank you, Luke.
Thanks. Mohammed, have you got anything you want to add to this?
Yeah, I mean, while you were talking, I remember a similar an experience where I was working in a Syrian refugee camp only a couple of years ago, and working with young children, literally. And to be honest with you, I just like to throw myself out there in a way. And there's times where I'm painting and I'm hiding my own tears. So it is a tricky one. But you know, at times I'm even warned. I'm told, you know, we can't. And I'm the kind of guy, you know, when you say you can't go to that neighborhood there because it's not safe, that's the first place I'm going, you know what I mean? So I might not be the best advisor here. And I always find those are the richest experiences for me personally. And that's how I connect my art to reality, you know, when I place myself in these kind of vulnerable situations and I'm immersing myself in the people. There literally has been times where people have said, don't go to that neighborhood. And I've gone there and I've been embraced in people's homes. And I've thought this has changed my life here and these people's lives. So, you know, just don't have a posh camera around your neck and have tourist written across your forehead.
Thanks, Mohammed. I'll remember that one.
Thank you. Ian Francis. Hi, Ian. You've got a question.
Hello, both. Thanks ever so much. That was amazing. I just wanted to ask you, Luke, I was reading about Lullaby, and I know this isn't strictly on the theme, but I was just really interested in how it's resonated during lockdown and how it's been repurposed.
Yeah, so the Lullaby artwork is an installation I devised about sort of 5 years ago, really. It involves inviting the public one evening, and we strap lots of little LED lights on everyone's bicycles, and then there are speakers playing beautiful lullaby music that's been written by a couple of local composers. And it's a way to, it's about that sort of fragile moment when you're putting your kids to bed It's that beautiful moment where you put in your kids to bed, and it's that sort of intimate experience. And I wanted a way to deliver a lullaby to all the children in a city, directly to people's homes. So yeah, we've got 40 bikes all covered in little LED lights flickering and sparkling, and then they've got this music, and then we cycle and we deliver this lullaby to all the streets, going down, up and down all the terraced streets of a city. It's a very beautiful thing, and there are often kids waiting for us in their pajamas with little torches on their doorsteps. And actually, yeah, we've presented it in Northern Ireland. It was very interesting. We had people in Derry performing it to the kids in Londonderry, and then vice versa on the following night. And we've performed it in Bristol and Perth, Australia, a few times. But yeah, it's suddenly, I've not presented it for a couple of years, and then suddenly there's lots of arts organisations who are really keen to present this artwork as a way to deliver a live experience, a sort of healing somehow, an intimate and beautiful experience directly into people's houses. Even during a kind of lockdown, it felt like it was kind of possible and safe thing to do. And so yeah, it has had a different meaning, and people have got quite emotional when they've experienced it. I think when we've been locked up and we've been so traumatized by watching the bloody news every day, there's something really beautiful about something actually coming to your doorstep and delivering an artwork directly to your home that feels like a gift to a community somehow. And it feels more precious now all the theatres and the festivals have been stopped, to have that live art experience.
Thanks. Thank you, Luke. Thanks, Ian, for the question as well. Alison, you have a very good question. Are you happy to ask it yourself?
Yeah, sorry, a bit slow there.
Right, you're here. Hi.
I wanted to ask both artists actually whether their experiences of producing death-related artwork has helped you personally to talk more openly about death and grief, because they are difficult subjects to talk about, and I kind of just wondered if it had helped in any way or had changed you in any way.
Thanks, Alison. Mohammed, do you want to go first this time?
Sorry, what was the question exactly? How has it changed?
The question is, how have your experiences of producing death-related artwork helped you personally to talk more openly about death and grief?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'd say it's a hard one for me because death is such an everyday reality. I mean, I was just thinking earlier, just to share the amount of, I could tell you now, forgive me if it upsets anyone here in the room, but I could tell you, I've lost count of how many dead bodies I've washed, right? Yeah, I've literally, in the mortuary, I've washed bodies because that's what I've been doing since I was a teenager, because in the community, when there's loss, we will get together. So it's so intrinsically part of who I am that, I'd say probably, yeah, my art has impacted, and my art has impacted, how my outlook in my everyday life. So yeah, absolutely. I'd say I'm much more, I kind of came into the heritage sector more so out of my understanding of art and its role in its relationship with death, because I started thinking after the loss of my father, I started desperately looking for, while I was yearning to hear the stories that he'd tell me, right? He was, the stories of, oh, son, when I first came to this country in the 50s, and I'll be there, oh God, it's in one ear and out the other, here he goes again. And after the passing, I'm sure everyone can relate to this, only after his passing, you're like, my God, I want to hear those stories. And I'd go on a mission, researching friends of my father, just finding anybody who knew my father, because, I didn't have a close relationship like that. And I took all these recordings to kind of inform my art. And I realized that I have hours and hours of these recordings, and that's how I eventually became a trustee of the museum, because I realized this heritage game that I just kind of felt like this is real and actually must be. I felt like it's not framed in an easy, accessible form to understand for the layperson, if you like. That why are archives so crucial to our existence, and how do we make people? I'll tell you one thing I do now. I speak and I record just my experiences onto an SD card. And I've said to my kids, I'm putting this in a box, a bit like a time capsule, if you like. I want you to listen to these in about 50 years time. You can't play it now. So I've actively almost kind of framing the archives and heritage in a way that it's in a much more tangible form. So I'd say that's one thing that's really informed my practice.
Thanks, Luke.
Yeah, I'm not very much in touch with any sense of death, really. I'm lucky enough to have both parents around, and my siblings. I'm quite scientific in lots of ways. I'm able to sort of compartmentalize myself, and so there's the work that I do and the thoughts that I have. There's the facts of the fact that we are all dust. we're bits of kind of carbon going around, temporarily defying gravity for 70 years, and then we'll be overwhelmed by gravity and reduce back to dust. We're just here for a very small amount of time, and that does affect my sense of life, I suppose, and making the most of the life we've got and the impact that we can have on other people, I suppose. But yeah, maybe it's a very sort of traditional English mentality, is that I don't want to talk about it. Thanks very much. That's just not who I am. But I'm happy to make the artwork about it for over there. If people, I can see it has a value and it's worth doing. But yeah, it's a funny thing.
Thank you. So
ask me that question in 5-10 years time. I'm sure I'll have a very different answer.
We'll be texting you once a year just to see if there's an update. Listen, we're coming to the end of our time together, so I just wonder, Mohammed and Luke, I'll talk for a bit to give you time to think about it. If there's anything else that you feel you want to say, this is a really unusual context for a conversation, isn't it? It's not the usual thing. How can artists create space, opportunity, invitation for acts of collective remembrance and grieving? I'm not sure if we'll find ourselves in this conversation again anytime soon. So if there's something else that you feel you'd like to say on this theme, I think it would be that would be great. Or even any reflections on the experience of having been invited to speak in this context.
Yeah, I find it, part of it is wonderful. Part of it's slightly awkward for me because I don't sort of talk about these things. But I think that's probably quite normal for lots of people in society. And now we're up to like 70,000 excess deaths. I think our entire UK population is going to get closer and closer to more and more talking about this. We're going to be talking about it, and it's going to become closer to our lives. If we haven't been impacted already, it's coming our way, isn't it, really? And so I think in some ways there'll be some benefits to that. It will make our lives more meaningful, perhaps. We won't take life for granted anymore, Over to you,
Mohammed.
I think as people, we have this unique position of making public art in the public space in these urban kind of centers that we live in and exist in. And often I just think the chaos of these cities that we live in, just like Birmingham, where we literally are living on top of each other, rubbing shoulders with each other. I think it's such a beautiful opportunity to explore, especially with COVID, that's kind of heightened our awareness about and our fragility of our existence. I think it's a golden opportunity for us to explore this thing together. Death comes to anybody, regardless of what religion or color you are, right? This is something that is actually, in a way, unites us in a funny way. And I think as public artists, exploring in the public space, it's the best space to explore it, because it's going to be the most unexpected place where you see it. In the landscape where you see Calvin Klein ads and, let's face it, these things we don't really need in our lives, bombarded on our phones and our timelines and the billboards and the digital screens, I think public artists have a unique opportunity to provide that alternative, radical altering of the visual landscape. Because if we can heighten people's understanding and awareness of death without treating it like this taboo that we always have kind of let it be, then I think we can live in a better world, right? We kind of start to treat our neighbor differently, because you realize I might not get the opportunity, you know, to put off that moment where you might say, you know what, I don't really talk to my neighbor. They're a bit different. They're from a different whatever. But, you know, actually using that moment to say, there's no time like the present, because I don't know if I'm going to be here tomorrow. Sorry, it turned into a bit of a sermon, but
Thank you. Thanks, Mohammed. It wasn't a sermon, it was rousing words. It's inspiring. And so I would like to say to both of you, thank you so much for generously talking about your work and being up for this whole way of thinking and talking and being responding to everyone's questions. And thank you also to everyone who's here for your questions and generosity. Please do, there are two things I'd like to invite you to do, and then I wonder if Antonia wants to say a few more words. So this is what I'd like to invite you to do. Please let us know in the chat any reflections that you have, or thoughts or questions for a future conversation. And also, before you leave, if you just unmute and say bye, then that's just a lovely way to hear everybody's voice. So thanks so much, and Antonia, back to you.
Great. I'll just move everyone from the spotlight. Lovely, great. Oh, thank you so much, Luke, Mohammed, Orit, for such an interesting conversation. I can't believe how quickly the time has passed. Actually, we could have talked for so much longer, but yeah, thank you so much for sharing your work, for sharing your personal stories, reflections. It's been fascinating to have such a broad discussion in many ways about death, art, COVID. It's a conversation that's needed now more than ever, really. So thank you very much. Just to say that, of course, please follow all our speakers on social media. Check out their work if you aren't already familiar with it. Brumiodo will be hosting some more online events over the coming months, and next Thursday, the 5th of November, we're going to be hosting a virtual death cafe. It's going to take place between 10:30 a.m. and 12:30, and it's free to attend, and it's going to be followed by a Q&A on the legalities of death. So if you'd like to join us for our virtual death cafe next week, then you can register your place via our website .org.uk. And yeah, I think that just leaves me to say thank you so much again for joining us this evening. As Orit says, please feel free to unmute yourself and say a quick bye before you go. But yeah, thank you again for joining us, and take care.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Sorry I was late.
Bye.
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 Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay. Leave. Great. I think it's just, oh, Mohammed's gone, hasn't he? Yes. Oh, well.